Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What, where we roll out an assembly line of wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing things uttered by politicians and the chattering class. So the right says the left is wrong, while the left says the right, and particularly President Trump, is evil. They really believe that. And it's poisoned their mind to the point of distraction or even psychosis. Exaggerating, am I? Well, listen to none other than the most famous loser in political history, two-time loser by 14% of the Electoral College in 2016, say, without irony, that she could produce the same result in 2020.
He tweeted just this morning, and I'm going to quote, he said, "I think that crooked Hillary Clinton should try to enter the race to try and steal it away from uber-left Elizabeth Warren."
It truly is remarkable how obsessed he remains with me. So maybe there does need to be a rematch. I mean, obviously, I can beat him again.
You know, these days people can use technological wizardry to make it seem like a person said something they didn't really say. This is not one of those times. Hillary actually said she would beat Trump again. But we're just getting warmed up. Here's Chuck Todd, host of the prestigious Meet the Press show, grimly and breathlessly delivering essentially the Democrats' top talking point.
I don't say this lightly, but let's be frank, a national nightmare is upon us. The basic rules of our democracy are under attack from the president. We begin tonight with a series of admissions by the president that all but assures his impeachment in the House of Representatives. It's a moment of truth for Republicans, and they've been largely silent on what we've seen from the president. Today, he publicly called on two foreign governments to interfere in the presidential election by investigating his chief 2020 political rival.
So that was when Trump doubled down on Ukraine, investigating Biden by asking for China to do the same thing. Trump, as usual, throwing everyone completely off balance. Now, listen to Jill Wine-Banks. She's a lawyer who was one of the prosecutors during the Watergate scandal. She demonstrates perfectly the Trump-deranged mind of the left, to the point of becoming essentially detached from reality, psychotic and dazed and confused beyond all get out on, where else? MSNBC.
You could impeach Pence first. The problem is that Donald Trump then has to name his replacement. But I think that maybe a deal could be struck where he was told, if you don't make a replacement, then Nancy Pelosi does become president. And so you are going to be impeached and convicted. You need to make this replacement so that the proper party remains in power.
Do you believe a mainstream TV channel, a legitimate one, would actually put someone like that on the air? But what's missing in the Democrats' single-minded pursuit of overturning, reversing the results of the 2016 election is what the voters think. Are the hardworking folks in flyover country, you know, the deplorables, the irredeemable tens of millions who voted for Trump, upset about Ukraine? Really? In the leftist echo chamber where swamp dwellers live in a closed loop, they apparently think so, or more likely don't care because these are Trump supporters after all. But listen to how a Democratic Congresswoman in Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin, was greeted when she expressed her support for impeachment, and this was on CNN.
Myself and 6 other members of the freshman class in Congress, all former military or former CIA, wrote a joint op-ed and came out in support of an impeachment inquiry. And I wanted you to know from me,
when you fell off the cliff for me was when you joined the coup against our president.
What's the rush with the impeachment? Impeachment is a serious thing. This would be only the 4th president in history to be impeached, and to try to impeach him on something like this is really stretching it.
That confrontation demonstrates why Nancy Pelosi is so hesitant to call a vote on impeachment. It would force all of her members of Congress to go on the record supporting the only thing they've really involved themselves with since winning the House a year ago, impeachment. But unbeknownst to most, because of the Democrats' bold talk and absence of action on the latest threat to the Constitution perpetrated by President Trump, the fundamental character of the Democrats' presidential primary has changed fundamentally with the growing problems of Joe Biden and Ukraine, and now this week's admission by Bernie Sanders that he ignored the warning signs, did indeed have a heart attack, and will be scaling back his campaign.
I must confess that I was dumb. I've been doing, in some cases, 3 or 4 rallies a day, running all over the state, Iowa, New Hampshire, wherever. And yet I, in the last month or two, just was more fatigued than I usually have been.
Bernie's loss will undoubtedly be the gain of Elizabeth Warren, who has now surpassed the collapsing Joe Biden at the head of the field. Biden was ahead by double digits 2 weeks ago, and that lead has now all but evaporated. Now, the attacks on Trump this week were not limited to his phone call with the Ukrainian president, nor did they only come from the left. The president infuriated neoconservatives and war hawks when he decided to withdraw a small number of troops from Syria near where Turkey may be set to invade, and was, of course, presented with a loaded question from the media.
Why are you siding with an authoritarian leader and not our Kurdish allies?
Well, I'm not siding with anybody. We've been in Syria for many years. You know, Syria was supposed to be a short-term hit, just a very short-term hit, and we were supposed to be in and out. That was many, many years ago, and we only have 50 people in that area. That's a small sector, and I don't want those 50 people hurt or killed or anything. I don't want anything bad to happen to our people, and I told that to President Erdogan. I said, don't hurt any of our people get hurt, big trouble. They could suffer the wrath of an extremely decimated economy.
But that explanation was hardly convincing to the neoconservatives who supported the Iraq war, including the president's frequent ally, Lindsey Graham.
If I didn't see Donald Trump's name on the tweet, I thought it would be Obama's rationale for getting out of Iraq. So here's what's going to happen. This is going to lead to ISIS reemergence. Nothing better for ISIS than to create a conflict between the Kurds and Turkey. The Kurds will now align with Assad because they have nobody to count on because we abandoned them.
Old Lindsey Graham never met a war he didn't want to join. But my educated guess is that the American people support the president's decision to get the troops out of harm's way a lot more than leaving them in the line of fire. In fact, probably by a large margin. And we'll be back to consider a troubling and growing trend: support for socialism and disdain for capitalism.